Hello, hello, and welcome to the PvA Nightly Rundown. I'm your host, Luke Croft, and it is Monday, July 15th, and you have tuned in for the nightly show where we run through all of the gaming news that you may have missed throughout the day. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend and had a wonderful Monday as well. My Monday was excellent because I'm on vacation, and that means that I didn't have to go to work today. Means I just sat around, chilled all day, played some League of Legends, I watched some Psych. I got my new microphone set up. Hopefully it sounds okay. Let me know in the chat if it does not sound okay. I tested it out a little earlier today just to make sure everything was good and it seemed to be fine, but just want to make sure that nothing got lost in the translation of actually going live with it. So if something sounded a little off, let me know. What else did I do? Oh, I got these lovely bats hung up today as well. I wish I could take my camera over there. I'm going to grab one of these because one of them is something that is a really cool gift. So two of these are like super old bats. One of these is actually a wooden softball bat. The other is a wooden just a regular wooden baseball bat. But then let me grab this one and I'm gonna fix my chair also. This right here is a game used bat signed by one of my favorite players of all time. So I'm a huge Cleveland Indians fan, and this was signed by first baseman Carlos Santana. So not the guitar player, the first baseman. So yeah, got those hung up today, and I also hung up my Git fiddle, which I can right over chow right over there. My Git fiddle. So yeah, was a little productive. Got a couple things done. Very good day overall, and I got several more of them to go, which I'm very excited about as well. But for those of you who don't know what this show is, this is the PvA Nightly Rundown. I'm going to run you through all the gaming news you may have missed throughout the day, so that you don't look like a freaking idiot at the water cooler tomorrow when you're like when you hear somebody say Apex Legends, doesn't have any new ways to combat cheaters. And you just sit there nodding like, oh yeah, he's so right. Nope, false. You can correct them. We'll talk about that story here in just a minute. But yeah, we do this live every weeknight over here on twitch.tv/PVA radio. You can stop by, chat with us live over here. Love the interaction. So and this show's a lot more loosey-goosey. So on Wednesday we do PVA radio. It's a lot more structured, but this show is all about like chat interaction, people coming by, giving their opinions in the gaming news, and derailing the conversation if need be. So if you're here chatting live with us, we definitely encourage you to chat along. But if you miss it live, you can watch it over on youtube.com/PVA radio as well. And we're actually going to start doing something really cool with our content here, rather than just posting the whole thing in a big chunk, which obviously we're still going to do. We're going to break it out topic by topic as well, so that if you just want to hear me talking about one story, you can go do that. We're also doing that with PVA Radio now as well. Our YouTube channel is about to get a lot more content, but we realize like we're already producing the content. We just got to make it in more bite-sized chunks, because we want people to come. We feel like what we're making over here is cool, and we want people to be able to find it. And it's a lot easier to say, oh, I'll give this video a 5-minute glance, listen to them talk about this topic that I care about, rather than, oh yeah, I'll invest an hour and a half, to listen to this episode of PVA Radio to see if I like this thing. So, because there's just not a lot of people that operate like that. And who can blame them? An hour and a half's a long time. So, all right, guys. Let's jump into it, though. Let's get into games that released today. Again, we always pull this from the Weekend Games over on Kotaku from Zach Zweisen. He does a good job of compiling some games, although last week, Lust for Darkness was a game that released on the Switch but was not on his list. I should tweet at him, let him know. But let's hop over here. There we go. Perfect. So releasing today, we have Break the Game coming out on PC, Kim Shooter on PC, Aura coming out on PC, and then C64 and Amiga Classics Remake 6-Pack 3 on PC. So pretty slow release day, but yeah, those are all of your games that are releasing today. Marvel Ultimate Alliance coming out later this week. That's a game that I know Larry is very, very excited about. We talked about it at length on PvA Radio last week. Larry's out of town for the next 2 weeks, so he said he's buying this the day that it comes out, which is Friday, but you're going to have to wait an additional week before hearing his thoughts. So I'm sure he'll come back and have plenty to say about it on PvA Radio episode 51. But this week, we got some special guests on PvA Radio. Not done with the housekeeping quite yet. Well, special guests. We've got Andrew Nimsgren from Project Esports. Oh, Lar Hunts Zombies in the chat here. He says, I am everywhere. Did you make it to Maryland? Okay, my friend. Also, you like my NASA shirt? Bought this at Old Navy. It's more of a sweatshirt, but... Anyway, we're going to have Andrew Nimsgren from Project Esports. He runs a website called Popped Off as well. He's going to be hanging out with us. And then we've also got the following week, we've got Jarrett Wilson, who is from Team Chat Podcast, which is another great podcast. He's going to be guest hosting with Cody and I the following week. And then we'll welcome back Larry with open arms. And Larry says he loves the shirt. Also, how's the sound quality? I'm trying this new mic. Finally, I got my little mixer here. The new microphone setup is rocking it, so feeling pretty good. It sounded good on the VOD that I recorded earlier. So let me know if it sounds funky or something sounds weird about it. If it sounds worse than the Yeti. Sounds good to you? Fantastic. All right. Well, let us jump into the show with our first story. PlayStation Vita support may be ending in 2020. This is actually a story over on DualShockers that has an update as well, but we'll read the update at the end. So it says, following its Japanese release in December 2011, the PlayStation Vita has slowly been declining in popularity. It's become a niche platform that started strong with games in the Uncharted and Killzone franchises, and game releases, especially Western ones, have been scarce in recent years. If an update made on the Kickstarter page for a game called Project Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story, is to be believed, it could potentially be the last PlayStation Vita release. Here's the quote. Quote, that said, don't fret, development is going very well. We just want to deliver the best game we can in the best way possible. A few extra months assures that. For those wondering about the Vita release, as far as we are aware, everything is still good and set in stone for the release. We may be cutting it close, but we still, according to what we have access to on our dev publisher dashboard with Sony, are going to make the cutoff. We might be the last game ever released on the Vita, end quote. As Project Sense, a cyberpunk story, is releasing in early 2020, the statement seems to suggest that Sony's support for releasing new games on the system may be ending next year. So that's the top of the story, and I'll give kind of my thoughts on all of this as a whole here after we read the update. So the developers have since gone on to Twitter and posted a clarification of what they said. So here's the quote. Quote, there appears to be a significant amount of misunderstanding and miscommunication regarding our update on Vita. This is partially our fault, as multiple people manage our social media, and we were not all on the same page. This is also the result of further distillation by some news sites, which have covered things based on misunderstandings as well. This has spread very quickly, much to our dismay. First off, as far as we know, there's no cutoff for digital releases currently, but with the Vita console production having ended and the SEI CEO... Hold on, let me click over here because the tweet goes on. Where's that thread? Oh my gosh. He tweets a ton about it actually, which I did not realize. So let's and the SIE CEO having explicitly stated Vita support will end in 2020. We've heard multiple things back. Many sources, our own publisher isn't worried, but wanted us to know the longer we take, the closer we may cut it to something coming up as an unexpected roadblock. So, okay, the rest of the statement is interesting. So, I do want to spend a minute just talking about the Vita because obviously it is coming to an end. He links to this PlayStationLifestyle.net article where John Codera talks about the Vita support ending in 2020. And it's been 9 years, guys, which is wild to think about. You know, the Vita came out 9 years ago. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think the PlayStation Vita was well ahead of its time. PlayStation had this vision for bringing console quality games to a handheld device so that people could go and play Killzone and Uncharted and all of these different seemingly AAA experiences. And that's not ultimately what it ended up being in the end. In the end, it was a great place to play indie games. It was a great place to play JRPGs, but it didn't quite get the backing and support that Sony had originally planned for it. And we've talked at length on this in podcasts in the past, and the Vita was constantly a butt of jokes at when we were doing the Player 3 podcast, because Sony has had a habit of releasing peripherals and accessories that they stop supporting after some time, right? So, the Vita, the Move, the PlayStation Eye, there's been a lot of different things that they've started and haven't really kept up with. And the PlayStation Vita was one of those things, and it had some things right at the front that really kind of damned it out of the gate from the start, right? So, for instance, like the proprietary memory cards were a big deal, right? That you were spending over $100 for the largest memory card. And, they really tried to push the 3G connectivity of the original device. And, there was like a Wi-Fi only, and then there was a 3G model, and it just got kind of confusing. And those who purchased the 3G model, from what I'm remembering, the price for the 3G support, like to get a network plan, was just outrageous, right? And then they had the proprietary chargers as well that were also astronomically priced, and so they kind of doomed themselves from the start. And it's one of those things, and I've talked about this with the PlayStation VR, right? Like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you build a big install base and then put your biggest studios behind it, or do you put your biggest studios behind it in the hopes of building a big install base for these things? Like, if you don't have your Naughty Dog and all of your big studios working on stuff in support of this device, what's attracting people to buy it, right? And in the beginning, it was the Killzones, it was the Uncharteds, it was these bigger titles, and those started to fall off. But and it makes sense, right? The Vita didn't sell quite as well as they thought it was going to sell, and so it didn't make sense for them to dedicate their best resources to making games for it. But I do think that the Vita is the reason that we have the handheld gaming scene that we have now. I think the Switch, I think we can thank the Vita for the Switch's existence to an extent. And the Switch took a lot of lessons from the Vita. They made it really easy to develop for. They made it a premier place for indie games and indie developers to want to put their games. They kept everything pretty standard in terms of support, right? It takes regular micro SD cards. It takes a regular USB-C plug. Like, they kind of got to look in retrospect to the PlayStation Vita and say, here's what doomed it for failure. So if we want to make something that is like a console experience, a high-end, not high-end, but console quality experience on the go, these are the things that we need to avoid. And I think the Vita is the reason that we can that we have what we have today. And so I don't know, the story is weird, right? With the little quote, and I think it makes sense with his explanation of like, no, we just heard like it's gonna be support's gonna end sometime in 2020. There's obviously probably a cutoff date. I have to imagine that they are aware of a cutoff date. If they've stated plans for placing their game on the Vita, I think it is in their best interest to talk to Sony about what that timeline looks like. And I think it's in Sony's best interest to communicate those things, right? Especially with it being a Kickstarter. because if they miss that deadline, then they're going to leave their backers disappointed. And so I think that they probably know more than they're letting on with this update. I do think that they are aware that there is a deadline that's close to when they're hoping to release, or at least hoping to submit their game for certification. And so this is kind of a non-story, I guess, at the end of the day with this update, but it's also been a slow news day, right? I've got like 4 items on my list today, but I've got my Vita box right back here, my Borderlands 2 Vita box on my shelf, my 3rd Vita that I bought. So I bought an OG PlayStation Vita, like a month after it came out. I was on a trip with a friend of mine, and I was like, man, we were going to be gone for a couple days. I was like, I really want to play MLB The Show. And so we went to a GameStop. I ended up buying the 3G model of it so that I could like download roster updates and stuff. And I played the shit out of that thing. Ended up down the road trading it in for some reason, and then ended up purchasing another one. And I got really into playing a lot of indie games on it. I also played a shitload of Minecraft on it for some reason. And then I don't remember what happened to that one, but I ended up purchasing a 3rd one. And then I got into things like Freedom Wars and started to in Persona 4 Golden, and started to get into the library of games that everybody had really talked about being why you need to own a Vita. And it's just stellar how ahead of its time it was. Also played a game called Race the Sun, like obsessively on that thing as well. Just a ton of Race the Sun. Those take me back to like my early days of being married, sitting in the living room playing Race the Sun on my Vita. Played a lot of FIFA on my Vita on my honeymoon. Chilling in the hotel, drinking on the balcony at 10 a.m. So I've got fond memories of the Vita. It's going to be sad to see it go. I no longer own a Vita. But I know it's brought a lot of people happiness. It's got a real cult following. And by the time if this is the last game, I think it's going to be a sad day for a lot of people. But the legacy of the Vita is going to live on in what we have in handheld gaming today, I think. So, all right, guys, let's move on. Next story on the list. Apex Legends is dealing with cheaters in what I believe is the best way possible. This is from Andy Chalk over on PC Gamer. It says, Respawn Entertainment recently shared some information into what it's doing to combat the ever-present problem of cheating in Apex Legends. The new check-in posted to Reddit is light on specifics, but it reveals some big picture insights into what's being done to check people who are more interested in winning than in how they play the game. Developers are, quote, using machine learning to create behavior models that detect and auto-ban cheaters, end quote, Respawn wrote, and working to improve their ability to detect and ban spam accounts before they're used. Two-factor authentication will be required or may already be required on high-risk accounts in some regions. And of course, Respawn is continuing to work on its ability to detect new cheats going forward. And if Larry's still in the chat, I think this is we're getting into his favorite way of dealing with cheaters as well, and he's a big Apex Legends fan, so I'm sure he's going to be just over the moon about this story. The article goes on. The most interesting and also specific point, though, is that Respawn is matching up detected cheaters and spammers so they're forced to play against each other in matches. It's a bit like if you can't beat them, join them, except instead of joining them, you're bonking their heads together like coconuts and locking them in a closet. Until cheating is completely stamped out, and let's be honest, that's never going to happen. This is a strategy I can get behind, and this is him editorializing the story. But Larry says, I both love Apex and hate cheaters. Yes, a hell for cheaters to burn in together. It's true. It's very, very true. I like this idea, and I like this idea even better if you don't make the people aware of it, right? Because there's nothing more frustrating in a game than playing against people who are obviously cheating. And the main thing I can think of, right, are aimbots. And so to put them into some sort of purgatory where they have to just exist with one another, it's like this alternate universe, right? I'm all about that. And honestly, I think if you're going to deal with cheating, and if you have you have the ability to detect it, I think this is absolutely the way to go. We're going to look at another example of a way that I don't think it should go. and we'll get to that in just a second. But yeah, like, let them exist, let them do their thing, but just make them play against one another and let them experience the frustration of having to play with other people who are aimbotting or lag switching or whatever other ways, wall hacking, whatever ways exist to cheat. I don't know all the different ways that exist in Apex, but I'm sure they're countless. But with all these kinds of things, it's all about like how accurate and thorough is the detection. You know, are people getting falsely placed in these things, or is it really just like the most egregious of people? So that's an example. That's a good example of ways to deal with cheaters. Let's look at something that I'm a bit more concerned about, and that is from this article over on Kotaku about how Overwatch is going to be approaching cheaters. This is from Luke Plunkett. It says, Blizzard is currently testing a new and interesting way of dealing with cheaters in an Overwatch match. Whenever cheating is detected, they'll just automatically shut the game down. No question asked. They call it the next evolution of cheat detection in the game. Article continues, normally that would suck because everyone else would be punished for one person's crime, but Blizzard's Jeff Kaplan says in the video announcing the plans that the way their new system would work is that when the match was shut down, anyone not cheating would be fine and would face no penalty. That includes competitive matches, so you won't lose SR for the game being unfinished, regardless of whether the cheater was on your own team or the opposition. For cheaters, though, Kaplan says, quote, very harsh actions are happening, end quote. This is close to my heart, right? I love Overwatch. And I hate when my experience in Overwatch is ruined. And whether that is by somebody going AFK, somebody feeding, somebody being toxic in the chat, whatever it may be, I get the frustration, especially with Overwatch, when you get into a match and it's not like the ideal competitive environment. However, there's just something about this method that seems like it could be easily manipulated, right? A lot like in the same way. So there's not really a system like this, but there's a mechanic similar to this, right? Where if a player leaves within a certain amount of time at the beginning of a match, it'll just automatically end the match. And it's really frustrating because that timer is pretty long. I don't know exactly what the specific timer is, but like, let's say my team goes in and rolls the team in the first fight, and we're about to take the first point from them. Like, no problem at all. Somebody can back out, and we're like 2/3 of the way into capturing the point, and it just ends the match when it was really clear that at least we had the upper hand in that first fight. And yes, there's a ban. They may, if they do it often enough, their account may just get completely nuked. But, you know, even for just the one, whoever it is that backed out is going to face like a 5-minute penalty. But if you're 4 stacking, right, that means you have 4 opportunities to do that. I don't know. This just seems like something that could be very easily manipulated. Like somebody could go in and, oh, we're losing this match. Let me turn on this aimbot, or, you know, whatever, game detects it, automatically ends it. Yes, that person gets penalized for having something like that on. Or maybe if there's, I'm going to be honest, guys, I don't know all of the ways that exist to cheat. I don't cheat when I'm playing video games, right? Like, so I don't know if there's like levels of it, but I also know that Overwatch in the past has banned like certain overlay things that you can have going that give you information about the map, whether it's like ult trackers or something like that. And like, while ult trackers would be I think like a bannable offense, I don't think that's nearly as bad as like wall hacking or aimbotting, right? And so are there going to be levels of it? Is it if you get disconnected for cheating after X amount of times, your account's going to face consequences? I don't know. And also this to me is more like, you really have to have the detection software down in order to do something like this, because I don't want to be getting just backed out of matches left and right, you know? And I would say like a couple times a week would be too much for something like this. And even worse, I don't want to possibly have something happen to my account because the system bugs out, which we've seen examples of in the past as well. Or we've seen examples where Blizzard has changed course on something that can be legally used in competitive matches, or they've like come out and made a policy change and said, oh, that can't be. And within a day, they're taking action against accounts that have used it without any kind of like reasonable, I think my stream may have dropped out there for just a second. Anyway, without any kind of really like reasonable expectation of, oh, we let people, we gave people a week's notice or whatever. So I don't know. This could be interesting if it works well, but I just think it's easy to manipulate, and I think it's really hard to tell whether or not it is something that's working. Or it is something like you put in place that that is going to be fair, right? Larhunt Zombie says, you cut out briefly, but it wasn't too much. I'm dropping frames insanely here, and I don't know if something's going on. I need to like shut a couple things down, possibly. Let me do that. See if that helps. I also think I need to lower my bit rate on Twitch, if I'm being honest. I think I'm running it entirely too high of a bit rate. It's probably making it difficult for people on mobile to watch. But I don't know. What do you guys think about this detection system? Like, for me, it's just, I don't know. I get worried anytime it's going to be something like this. It's going to heavily impact my experience playing, right? And you just getting abruptly backed out. Jeff detected an aimbot on my stream. He's about to shut it down. I was searching Overwatch aimbot earlier today from another computer, but the all-seeing eye of Jeff watches over all of us. He's omnipresent, baby. All right, guys, let's move on. Gearbox is hosting a celebration. Oh, hold on. Lair Hunt Zombies has thoughts. The auto detect concerns me. That said, if someone is cheating, I would rather the game just end than have to suffer through it. Yeah, I guess that's true. I think I would rather it go through the game and notice that there was a cheater on it, and if I lost to the team that has the cheater, my SR is given back to me. And if I won on the team that has the cheater, I don't get any SR awarded to me. And if we won, then the team gets theirs back as well. Like, that's the way I would want it to work, I think, rather than just being like, whoop, you're out. But if this update comes and it's only happening once a week or something like that, I'll eat my words. I think they would probably err on the side of caution so that people's stuff isn't being like completely interrupted, but you never know until it comes out and how fine they've got to tune it, right? All right, guys. Next story on the list. Gearbox is hosting a Celebration of Togetherness event, but it is not about crossplay, as one would assume. This is from Ed McGloon over at my old stomping grounds, Twinfinite. He says Gearbox in Borderlands 3 is teasing something about celebrating togetherness tomorrow at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Whatever that is that's going on tomorrow, it's not crossplay. Randy Pitchford, CEO of Gearbox, took to Twitter today to confirm that, much amid fan speculation, presumably in an attempt to make sure fans aren't let down, and that there won't be a crossplay announcement tomorrow. However, in the same post, Pitchford confirmed that Gearbox is committed to supporting crossplay for Borderlands 3, quote, as soon as practical after launch, end quote. That's a pretty vague statement to be sure, but it's still a public and verbal commitment to trying to get crossplay for Borderlands 3. Here's the tweet. It says, some folks may be speculating that this thing tomorrow may be about crossplay. Tomorrow's thing is awesome, but not about crossplay. But good news, we are committed to supporting crossplay for Borderlands 3 with our partners as soon as practicable after launch. I want crossplay in everything, right? I bought a gaming PC over Christmas, and it's my favorite place to play things, but I play a lot of Xbox still because that's where most of my friends play. If everyone, if every game had crossplay, it'd be great because we could all just pick whatever console or system we like playing on the most, and then no problem, we can go ahead and play with our friends and then buy other things based on what exclusives we like. So Borderlands 3 having crossplay, like, it's the perfect game for it, right? It's a cooperative shooter, and so it would make sense to have PC people allowed to play with Xbox or PS4 people. So it's cool to see it. I'm really curious as to what celebrating togetherness or the celebration of togetherness is going to be tomorrow, if it's not going to be about crossplay. Lair Hunt Zombie says no one brings people together like Randy Pitchford. It was actually really interesting trying to find a story for this, because I think a lot of people just aren't wanting to give Randy Pitchford the platform anymore. And so there were a lot of people like either not pasting the link to his tweet in here, or they were just directly like or they were just like directly leaving it out, right? It was really interesting to find, but Randy Pitchford has become like really something toxic that you don't want to touch, and understandably so. He's not really a great human being. So all right, guys, well, we're good feeling good now. Also, check the audio quality. I'm loving this mic. This mic is awesome. I still have a couple things I need to do to it to play around with to get it to where I want it quality wise, but it sounds awesome. Anyway, where were we? We were talking about Randy Pitchford and Larry's great comment about how no one brings people together quite like Randy Pitchford. And he's absolutely right. But yeah, it was interesting trying to find a story that included his tweet, because I looked up several of them and they didn't. They maybe made reference to them, but like people weren't doing like Ed did here, where they just put his tweet directly in there. But which is interesting because that's not really common practice, right? So, all right, guys. Well, let's move on. Next story on the list. And then also just a heads up, after this, we're going to be doing placements for this season of Overwatch. I still haven't done mine yet, so we'll definitely get that done. And this is actually going to be our last news story of the day. And it's a slow news story. We've had a lot of kind of like non-stories about things that aren't happening or may be happening or may not be happening. The cheating thing, I think, was really, if it was a normal news day, really the only thing we'd probably really cover. Especially given the update of the Vita story. But this one's about the Division 2, and this one made the rounds over the weekend. This is from Robert Ramsey over at Push Square. It says the Division 2 director asks for thoughts on a single-player story-driven Division game. It says the Division is one of those properties that has an interesting concept at its heart, but because it's a co-op-enabled experience, the story and characters are never really given room to breathe. But what if the Division wasn't an always-online, multiplayer-focused series? What if there was a single-player story-driven spinoff? This very idea was presented to the Division 2 creative director Julian Garrity on Twitter. Interestingly, Garrity retweeted the idea along with one word, quote, thoughts, end quote. Obviously, it's important not to read too much into this. A single tweet certainly doesn't mean that there's a single-player Division game in the works right now, but the fact that the idea is getting this kind of attention is enough to raise an eyebrow. Adding fuel to the admittedly quite small fire, Garrity adds, quote, apparently not something people are violently against, end quote, followed by a smiley face. Again, intriguing. Again, this is not a news story. It is a guy who is connected to a game, floating an idea for a game that I'm sure has been floated around their meeting rooms and creative brainstorming sessions in the past. But it makes you think, right? Like, I'm a fan of the Division. I've enjoyed it. I think the world and the premise behind the world is interesting. But I think that having an interesting world and telling interesting stories are two really different things, and they're kind of difficult to pull off, right? And so I think what makes the Division is the loot grind, is the playing with friends. And while there have been good stories told in the Tom Clancy universe, I don't think there's been very many of them. And so I don't know. I'm of the mind, like, if it's something that they want to do, more power to them. But to me, like, just give me more of the Division, and I'm going to be totally fine with it. And there are other games that exist that can give me that single player experience, right? And they're also working on like a Division movie, some things like that. They're going to be taking place in the universe as well. And so we're going to get a glimpse more of the character driven stuff. But I don't know, creating a good game from like a loot grind, shared world shooter perspective is a lot different than making a good game that is single player story driven, right? So I don't know. I think just stick with the formula that's gotten you to where you are. And I also understand that I'm probably in the minority here of this, and that's totally fine if you disagree. But tell me of a Tom Clancy game, in your opinion, that has a really good story. There have been games that have had really fun campaigns. I think of like the Rainbow Six Vegas games. Let's see, what else? Like the Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter games had really good, but those were like squad based, right? I think Rainbow Six Vegas was squad based as well. So yeah, I don't look at a Tom Clancy game and think, man, those are great story driven games. Or those games have the potential for a great story. They're always put against these interesting backdrops, some of them more believable than others. But so yeah, I am a nay on this. I'm not violently against it though. If it's something they want to do, more power to them, and I'm open to see them try a single player experience, But just historically with Tom Clancy games, it's not really something that we've seen. But then again, we hadn't really seen historically a Tom Clancy game thrive as a competitive online multiplayer shooter. And we have Rainbow Six Siege, right? So there's room to be proven wrong, and I am totally okay with being proven wrong. So, all right, guys. Well, that wraps it up for our news stories for today. Again, a really short day. Tomorrow, it looks like we're at least going to have some Borderlands news to talk about, so that's going to be awesome. Also, we've got some cool stuff that's happening over on the PvA radio front. I mentioned already, we're going to be splitting out our episodes by topic, also posting the whole thing, so that if that's something that you're into, you can still listen to everything that we do. But I also recognize that some people just want to hear us talk about individual topics, right? They just want to hear us talk about the Division 2 single player. They just want to hear us talk about the Vita. They just want to hear us talk about Marvel Ultimate Alliance 4. And like, okay, I get it. Marvel's big. I did not think Marvel Ultimate Alliance was as popular as it is. But it is going to end up being our most successful topic, our most successful video in PvA radio history over on our YouTube channel. No idea. Had no idea. So yeah, we're going to be breaking more content out individually. We're also going to be bringing back written content, which is where my heart lies. I love podcasting and talking about gaming news. I love Twitch streaming, but at the end of the day, I love writing. And so we're definitely going to be doing more written content. We've gotten some stuff set up, so be expecting some words on the paper from me, Cody, and Larry moving forward. Some of it centered around our topic, some of it just centered around whatever is going on in the gaming world. So yeah, a lot of really exciting things, a lot of really fun things happening here. I'm going to go ahead and end it for our YouTube audience over here. We appreciate it. We love you guys, and we appreciate the support. This has been the PvA Nightly Rundown, which is the daily show where I go through all of the gaming news that you may have missed throughout the day so that you don't look like a freaking idiot at the water cooler tomorrow when you're like, oh my gosh, guys, did you know that they're just going to keep supporting the Vita for years and years to come? And everybody's just looking at you, thinking like, man, I'm going to eat that guy's ham sandwich he brought out of the fridge. You guys have that guy at work that like eats other people's stuff out of the fridge? I don't have that at the place that I work now, but at the business that I ran, we had a couple people that worked there. He just thought, like, if it's in the fridge, even if it has a name on it or something, like, free reign, up for grabs. So Don't be that guy at work, guys. Don't be that guy. But if you want to join us live, we do this every weeknight over on twitch.tv/PvA Radio at 9 p.m. Eastern time, except for Wednesdays, because on Wednesdays we record PvA Radio, which is our weekly gaming news podcast, where each of us brings one of the biggest gaming news stories of the week to the table. Then we have an in-depth discussion about it. That's at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time over here on twitch.tv/PvA Radio. You can also subscribe over on all of your podcast services to get the feed. Thinking about possibly putting this show there, but I'm not quite sure yet because it's not really built for audio listeners, but who knows? If it's something people want, I am definitely interested to hear it. So we're going to end it, guys. For the YouTube audience, if you're over here on Twitch, keep hanging out. I'm going to start playing some Overwatch. And until next time, we love you. Goodbye.